to order no matter what happens. I'm just gonna pretend it's a regular meeting and everything's working right. Okay. So if you're new and you've never been here before, raise your hand a bit. We just want to see how many folks. Fabulous. It looks like we got a lot of new people sitting at that table all by themselves. We should have somebody go sit there in the back. Okay. So just take a couple minutes to introduce yourself to the other people at the table and talk about, you know, what's going on and how you got through the worst rainstorm ever to get here. You know, this is what happens, folks, when Democrats pray to end the drought. Please stop praying for that. Okay, your prayers have been answered. Enough already. Okay, so for those of you who are new or haven't been here in a while, here on the screen is a list of the communities that we cover. We're unusual as a Democratic club because we cover a little more geography than most clubs. So first thing off we're going to do is say the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand now that I've got you. Okay, and over to the right of the speaker is a flag. I pledge allegiance. So welcome everybody. I wondered when I was driving over here if anybody would show up. Whoa. And I had visions of hydroplaning and all of that kind of thing. I was giving myself lectures about what to do if I got in a skid. Yay. So good. Okay. If you didn't get an agenda when you came in, there are plenty in the back. I just wanted to, I usually do a little bit about big holidays in the month. And really what I'm doing now is talking about holidays in the next month, but I have a reason for that. Because these holidays, Ramadan and Passover that happen next month are going to change the date of our meeting. So if you look at the very bottom of your agenda, we're not meeting on the 3rd Tuesday, we're meeting on the 4th Tuesday. Okay. So I thought I'd say just a little bit about Ramadan since I'm looking around the room guessing that maybe there aren't a majority Muslims in the room. But we have, as you know, quite a few neighbors here in the area who are Muslim and who there are several mosques in the area. So we should be aware of this. So this is the month during which Muslims believe the Prophet Muhammad was given the first revelations of the Book of Quran to the angel Gabriel. And those of us who are in a Christian tradition know that Gabriel got involved in our religion too. So the Ramadan begins on March 22nd or 23rd, depending on when you first see the moon. And it lasts for 30 days until April 21st and 22nd. And Muslims fast during daylight hours. That means no food and no water from sunrise to sunset. And it is expected that all healthy adults will follow this rule. And Ramadan ends with a big holiday, Eid al-Fitr, which is the breaking of the fast. And Muslims celebrate by giving thanks for the strength that Allah or God has imparted into them during the fasting. And the children receive new clothes and young girls may decorate their hands with it. So please wish your neighbors happy Ramadan. if it's appropriate. And don't forget that our next meeting is on the 4th Tuesday, and we will remind you, but I'm hoping that I won't get too many emails like I always do, and like, why are you changing the meeting? You know. Okay, so this is our agenda. And we do a lot of our business in one fell swoop. So what we do is we have what we call the consent agenda. So all the things that have the little boxes with check marks, we vote them on at one time. And there's really not anything very controversial on that list, except, I don't think it's controversial, but it's certainly new, a change in our membership due. Ann Owens and I and Parshawn have been meeting to talk about how to encourage younger people, younger families to join our club. And we decided that we didn't like the term young Dems because that sounds like high school or college kids, and that's really not what we're after. So we decided to call it young families and young individuals. These are people under 35, and we're going to give them a break in dues to encourage them to join. And so Anna and I have another meeting being set up to work with Parshawn Khashoggi to talk about, because he's the youngest person we've had around here, to talk about how to implement this. But we're asking for your support tonight to implement this and check, and there's only about 3 people that would be impacted by this change in dues. And of course, it takes effect as of tonight. So we're not going to go ask them to pay more dues because they're under 35 and they only pay $15. So that's one of the things on the agenda. Are there any questions on this? Okay, all right. The other thing that's on the agenda is the treasurer's report. And it's pretty straightforward. We got in more money from the holiday party, which is wonderful. Makes our numbers look better. And we got money from the opportunity drawing and sustained donations. And there's been a big press on membership since he did this report. So those numbers will show up next month. Any questions on this? Okay. Then, if there are no questions and nobody wants to pull something from the consent agenda, then we'll go ahead and vote on it. Now, you should only be voting if you paid your dues and supposedly if you're a Democrat, but you know, we never check. We just, it's, you know, like being baptized, you know, we just, there's this thing, you can be baptized by wishing it, right? You know, some churches. So you just wish you were a Democrat, right? Okay. Yeah, whatever. All in favor of the consent calendar, please say aye. Opposed? Good. Kathy, our secretary, who's usually sitting over there, is at home with COVID when she got on a trip to Europe. So no more European trips. Okay. One other announcement. The Democratic Party is doing a presentation at the Laguna Woods Democratic Club. And if you'd like to go to it, it's on March 29th. But you need to let Sue Deering know by March 23rd if you want to attend. So if you're wondering what the heck all the Democratic Party is about, this would be a good place to go. And you can just check in with Sue Deering and she'll let you know, because she has to put you on a list to get you through the gate into Laguna Woods. Okay. All right. And if you can't remember any of this, just email me, chair@canyondems.org, and I'll send you the information. Okay. I think we're ready for committee reports. Mm-hmm. Is there any other business before we do that? Okay, Janet. Mm-hmm. All right. Janet even has a meeting.
Yeah, oh, is that what that is? Very good. Well, welcome everyone, and no doubt you guys are indicative of the strength, right, of a Democratic Party out on a night like tonight. Nothing keeps us down. So what I'm going to do tonight is, my committee tends to focus on our real local ones. And then as a club, we look at the other, offices. So today, we're gonna start looking at what is out there, who already has put their hat in the ring, and I might mention some names, but what I wanna make sure that, to emphasize is nobody has been endorsed. So I might say somebody's name, that doesn't mean that we as a club are now raising money for that person. Because that person has to get the endorsement of the party, some of them we can endorse locally, but you know how that works, it kind of rolls down, and there's a way to go, because there might be some other people that will be entering this race. So we'll start with the Orange County Board of Supervisors, and you will see that there's a tan area and a pink area. So the red dot at the top and the other red dot, those are the two that are coming up in the next election. However, one of them is more important to us, okay, and that would be the 3rd district, which is the one at the very top, and actually a bigger one. And currently that is held by Don Wagner, and we have no reason to doubt that he will run again. And I think I said this last time, or somebody else, because Judy and I were looking at some of these things, and she said, isn't he termed out yet? Hasn't he been around forever? Well, but he just runs for different offices, so he gets termed out and he goes on to something else. And then the other area that is important to us as a club is the 5th, but not in the next election, because that is Katrina Foley, and she's been elected until 2026. So for our purposes, the next one we will worry about will be unseating Don Wagner. Sound like a plan? Oh, no. Oh, okay. Okay, good, thank you. And then we move on to the Orange County Board of Education. And those of you that follow that know that that is a real, snake pit and a challenge for us, because it is held by some people that have nothing, they don't have any interest in public education. That's kind of why they got in those jobs, and they're basically trying to dismantle it, along with some other groups that have become prominent. So, if you look again at the tan region, that would be the one more at the top there. That, well, actually red, I'm sorry, red, for the Orange County Board of Education, currently held by Ken Williams, who is a mega Republican, or mega, yeah, not just, you know, a Republican, he is way out there. So we definitely need to unseat him. And currently the name that has a person who has just put her hat in the ring is Nancy Watkins. And that's the only person that we have heard of right now, and she is supported by some education groups out there, so we'll have to see how things develop, and some of you might know her as well. Then we move on to the local school board districts, and those are our endorsements. Those are things we don't have to wait for anybody else to endorse. So Capo, which we have just a sliver, so we don't tend to talk about it as much. And if you look at the red arrow, or the red circle there, that is currently held by Delia Jones, and it's only a very small part of Mission Viejo, and that will be our only worry in the upcoming election. And whether she runs again or there's somebody else that's yet to come. And then we move to the other one with Saddleback. We've got a green area up there, we've got a pink area and a blue area. We'll start with green. And one of our own members, Ed Wong, is the current member, and that is number 2, and he has not yet decided, so hopefully we can convince him to run in the next election. He is a club member. And then in the pink is Susie Schwartz, another club member, so we have a lot of good club members out there for education, and she has announced Susie Schwartz. And then the last area is the blue area, and that's way out in our pretty Republican area. That's where Amanda Morell is running. She is the current seat. And she has not declared one way or the other, and she is a Republican. So we would not be supporting her. Now for our city councils. Laguna Hills has 2 seats open. That would be Hef and Caskey in the next election. And then we have Lake Forest, 2C stuff, and we have some very active Lake Forest people in our group here. And one of them is District number 1 with Turbo and District number 5 with Pequeño. And both of those people are Republican. And so far, nobody Democrat has mentioned that they would run for either one of them.
It's Serbo.
Serbo?
Not Serbo.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Yeah.
Serbo, okay. Got that, Serbo?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's my mistake.
Mission.
Yeah. And then we go to Mission Viejo, and as of right now, they just got elected. There is no plan until, I guess, 4 years down the road, right? And then they're gonna have to figure out how they're gonna do some staggering. I guess eventually somebody's gonna have to have a 6-year term, right, to do some kind of staggering at hand here. I know.
Oh, did I?
Oh,
Okay.
back to Mission.
Ranch,
Okay. Yeah, and then we go to Rancho, and we have, a reminder, Rancho does not have any districts. Now, I think a few months ago, there was talk about perhaps pursuing getting districts, but I haven't heard anything since then, so I think it's fair to say that by the next election, there are not going to be any districts there. There are 2 seats up, Beal and Gamble. They are very well known in the community, that everybody knows their names, whether they know them or not. They're the founding father and mother of the city that started in 2020, and they just keep on. And our friend and club member, Ken Dixon, has announced that he will run. So that's kind of, yeah. So he's pursuing with his website and all of that and getting his name out. That's what he has to do. Any questions?
Can we get copies of those maps?
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
Yeah.
just shoot the presentation if you
Yeah.
have it?
We can send you those, but also know, a couple of the maps I copied from school districts,
Right.
but most of them come from the, county, registrar of voters, and they have, if you just go to their map,
Oh, okay,
it's
okay,
right there,
perfect.
yeah. Yeah, so, we're gonna be having, don't be surprised, you're gonna start to see candidates come prior to the start of our meeting to walk around and meet people. Joanna Weiss told me she wants to visit, and I said, well, until you're endorsed, you can't get up here and get the microphone, but, you can come at 6 o'clock and you can meet people and hand out your stuff. And I've told the same thing, to the lady who's running for the county school board, whose name just flew right out of my head.
Watkins?
Yeah, Nancy Watkins, which is really bad because I was her dissertation advisor a long time ago.
Where is she from? Do we know?
Yeah, I believe Nancy lives in Orange or somewhere up that way. That district, the very north end of Lake Forest, there's a few precincts in that district. And they drew that district just to keep Ken Williams with all the right wingers up in, Bill Park and so on. That county school board, I mean, well, you all met Shereen Williams last time, and we supported her and she got clobbered, so we're gonna have a lot of work to do to get somebody elected to that county school board, but it's just nastier than nasty. Okay, okay, Andy. You're up.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you here on this rainy day. How many of you in this room are a member of a focus group?
Good.
That's pretty good. How many of you are not a member of the focus group? Be honest now. Okay. And you all know what our focus groups do, I hope. We have a focus group leader for the unincorporated areas. Gary's here. if you live in Ladera Ranch or one of the areas that is runs basically by the county, Gary is your man. See him tonight and he'll tell you what he does in his focus group. Cindy, are you here tonight? Cindy, Ashley over there, she's the head of our RSM focus group. And she really needs people to get involved out there. We're going to be having some elections, as Janet has said, and we need people to get involved in those local elections. And Cindy's your girl. See her after the meeting if you'd like to talk to her and join her focus group. I'm Lake Forest. And we're trying to find candidates, Janet, really, we are. And so if you're in Lake Forest, you live there, come see me after the meeting and join my group. And Walt, where are you? Since Kathy's not here, tag you're it. I just met a fellow over here who lives in Mission Viejo. His name is Jin, and he's new tonight to our group. And he might be interested in participating in the Mission Viejo focus group. I know Ann is going to be meeting with him and having coffee, and you know what a wonderful job Ann does. So I imagine we'll have Jim doing something for us. He wants to volunteer. Just the first thing he said to me was he came here because he wants to volunteer. And I want to thank my friends Jean and Lois, who I haven't seen in so long. And Jean's come to meetings before, but Lois I haven't seen in a long time. They're in the Costa del Sol Club. Costa del Sol is an unchartered club, but they can join our club. And then they actually, their membership helps us get more delegates. Because for every 20 members we have in our club, we get a delegate to the pre-endorsement conference. So it gives Costa del Sol a voice because they are now a member of our club. So Ann and I are looking to go to Camp Costa del Sol and see if we can recruit some more members at their club.
Andy, it's a
Yes.
strong club too.
What?
It's a strong club.
Strong. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
President and
yes,
leadership.
yes. And we love that. But you're not a chartered club.
They can't,
They can't charter.
Well, it's a problem with Casa del Sol, whoever controls the board there says that if you're a political club, you can't meet there.
So being a member here gives you the advantage of being in a charter club and gives you that delegate. Yeah. So you were gonna ask a question? Oh, well, welcome. Thank you for being here. Please encourage more people to come and please join our club. All right. Are there any other questions about the focus groups? Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, you know, the Mission Viejo focus group got involved in all these lawsuits and really drove the right wingers on the city council crazy. And it's still ongoing. We still may win those lawsuits. So we really can make an impact locally. And we did elect a city council member in Mission Viejo, the first Democrat, right? Okay, so we can do it. Okay, and you want to talk about pre-endorsements? I put all this information up here, but I'm sure you'll make more sense of it than I did.
Well, to put it simplistically,
Can you all hear Andy?
yeah. Every year, Democrats meet and get together to endorse candidates, and that's what this is about. So our club, as Andy said, for every 20 members that we have, we get to get one candidate that will go and elect us. So if we have 300 members, we can send about 15 candidates. It's divided usually equally between male and female, and we divide it up according to your assembly district. So we'll be having an election, and the people who already have run for this particular office, I actually already emailed you, a little letter saying you've run in the past, would you be interested in running again? And I put the application to be on the ballot that we will be voting on in our meeting to elect people. So if there's anybody here tonight who did not get one of those and is interested in being a representative for the pre-endorsement conference, I have this whole pile of, your speakers here. I have a whole pile of forms here for you, okay? It gets a little, in the weeds, but, basically, there's often several candidates running for one office. Usually the people that, are representing our club get together and discuss these candidates or do some research on their own. Sometimes, I know last year, I believe Deborah had a little training session, Skirnick, with representatives to kind of teach them about who the different people were. And some clubs make you say, okay, if I'm representing this club, this is who we want you to vote for. That is not the case. You are free to vote for whoever you wish, using your best judgment that you think will be the best candidate. So we trust that you will use your good judgment for that. To run for representative, you must, so we have this application. So if anybody is, raise your hand. Anybody want one right now? Okay, back there, couple. Okay, I'll come over and get you in a minute when I'm done here. Okay, so, by the way, so this is held in the fall. You do not, last year, you did not have to go to the meeting in person. You could go online, or it was a Zoom, I forgot which one, but you could do it, you could actually vote from home. So if you don't want to go to like a big meeting or something somewhere, the voting was actually, so it was very convenient for you to, as a representative from our club. You do have to be a member, obviously. You have to be a Democrat, belong to the Democratic Party, and you have to turn in this form by May 16th. So those are basically the qualifications for this. There is, if you're not sure what your assembly district is, there's a little website on here that you can go to.
And there's also one.
And there's a map on the back, also that you can figure out which of the districts basically you represent. You obviously Mission Viejo is our largest district, but we will have some people from Wake Forest. I'm sorry. I think
No, don't.
oh, and we might even be able to get one from like the San Clemente area. All the candidates, sure, we can get one there now. So, that is it. Do you want me to do my stuff here?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just keep going.
Keep going.
Okay. So some of you maybe have been getting harassed the last week because we've had, I had basically 12 people calling 231 non-renewed members. And I said, keep at them, keep at them, keep at them till you get them. So, yes, Kathy.
One of them is right here.
All right, okay. Thank you so much. And we called 231 people. Of the people who answered, who believe me, there's a lot that don't. 77 said they would renew. We had, 8, we kind of cleaned up our roster. We had some wrong phone numbers, some people who just, were dropping or had moved. So I want to thank my callers. I think we'll have a pretty good result from this effort. So I thank you for doing that. Also, you should have also gotten a questionnaire this week that was emailed to you. And this is kind of my effort. I think we've always kind of relied on people to come to us and say, oh, this sounds like a good committee. We say, go and read over the committees and figure out ones for you. Well, I decided instead of putting it on their shoulders, it should be on our shoulders. And so this questionnaire asking what their interests are, what their skills are. And then what we're going to do is when these get sent back, Randy Simmons is my collator, and he is kindly going to go through them, and he's going to forward that information to the committee that their skills would be appropriate for. So this way we hope the committee chairman can call them then and get them involved and become more involved with our club. So if you got one of these and you haven't responded yet, please search for your email. And Heather, does it have your name on it?
It comes with me.
Yeah, okay. So it comes from Heather Gilbert, all right? And find that questionnaire and send it back. I think we've had about 40 some, Randy said, come back so far.
We have 10% response in day one.
Day one, good, okay,
And another large response.
great.
And I do have to say that the most recent renewals haven't got their questionnaire yet,
Okay,
because I tried to batch them up.
right, okay, all right. So if you haven't gotten one, be looking. For it. Okay, thank you.
Nice to have good news, huh? Okay, oh, and here's the April collection, that's next month, we're collecting for Wise Place. Did you find out, Anne, what they mean by linens? No,
No, I think they meant like towels.
okay, so we'll have more about this in the newsletter, and I know we had a collection tonight. Because I come in early, I don't get to see how much stuff you all bring, but it's wonderful, thank you. Okay, fundraising, Marty. Anybody else want to buy a ticket?
Last call.
Well, hello, Canyon Dems. How you doing? Thank you all for braving the terrible weather and being here. You guys are the rock stars. Okay, so we do have our sustaining donor program, which is for those of you who can give a little bit extra besides your regular membership. And so far, our 76 sustaining members have raised an extra $4,395 this year. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It makes a big difference. If you're a sustaining donor, raise your hand. Look at all of those beautiful people. Thank you so, so much. If you want to be a sustaining donor, just go on to ActBlue onto our website. And there's a place where you can say, I can give an extra $1 a month, or I want to give you a check for $50, or I have $100 a month because I'm really wealthy, or whatever you can do, we will take it. Every little bit helps. Okay, how do I switch to the next slide? Oh. Okay. Laura's not here, so I have to step up. So, chili con canyon, it's a new dish. I know that there are those of you who are very proud of your chili, and I know that there are those of you who are really proud of your cornbread. Well, this is your chance to prove it. We're gonna have a chili cook-off and a cornbread bake-off, and it's gonna be Saturday, April 29th from 4 to 7, and the address is on the application. Right now, we're accepting applications for people who want to cook or bake. I have some here, but they're also going to be on the website. Details are coming because we have to figure out exactly how this is going to work. But we would love to have you come and cook for us. And then we would love to have all of the rest of you come and taste the chili, taste the cornbread, and decide who's going to win. Now, the prize will be a wonderful trophy, which we haven't figured out. We're gonna come up with something really good. Also, if you're willing, if it's not like a family secret or something, we'd love to put your recipe on the Canyon Dems website so that everybody can have your wonderful chili. And then we're also gonna have a couple of other little surprises. So if you're interested, we have these little applications here. And we'd love to have you come. It should be really fun. They're gonna be wine and beer included, so how could you go wrong, right? I think that's it. Now, we also do our merch. We have wonderful merch over there. Patty has 2 examples of Earth Day's coming, Mother's Day's coming. Those are really cute little t-shirts that you might want to share. Make every day Earth Day. We should do that. We're Democrats. We're supposed to be diligent.
Other merchandise.
And there's a lot of other stuff over
Yeah,
there.
we're gonna have some new merchandise.
Yeah, we're ordering some new stuff, so stay tuned. And now, if you've had a chance to get your ticket for our, what did Barbara call it, a split pot? Split the pot. $85. Woo, $85. That means we get 85 and you get 85. I'm not gonna pick some in it.
$85.
Altogether, 170. So 85 to one to the club.
85 to the big winner. And the big winner is.
Why don't you let our guests?
Oh, there you go. Excellent idea.
We'll get your money the next time.
713803.
713803.
803. At the end.
803, 803, there you go. Yay.
Okay. Okay, next month, we have, our Sudi is our speaker. She's gonna be talking about the protest movement in Iran. And of course, we've all been seeing that in the news. And then on May, it's Dr. Louis DeCipio, the political science professor on immigration, okay? And tonight, our guest speaker is Dr. David Edward Burke. And he'll be up here in just a minute because I gotta close this program and open up his program. If I can find it. I usually add it into the end of mine, but it changed all your formatting and it looks so nice the way you did it that I didn't want to change it. Okay, let's go ahead and then I'll show you how to.
Well, I don't think it's a doctor, is it?
Oh, well, attorney, so.
Attorney, right, okay.
But you were talking. I know about it.
You're an attorney, right?
That's what they call it.
David Burke,
Hold the mic here now, please.
okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
David Burke, I think, has done some interesting work and probably is continuing to do some interesting work. He's been involved in Congress, he's been involved in congressional elections, and he's come away from that work with two hypotheses. One, big money is anathema to democracy, and the lack of citizen involvement is similarly an anathema to our democracy. Big money, you see our budget, I don't think we have to worry about big money here, but this group, Canyon Dems, is all about citizen involvement, right? We're here to elect candidates, we're here to be involved, we're here to volunteer, so everyone can viscerally understand what he's talking about when he talks about involvement. He's a much better speaker than I am. He doesn't have a Brooklyn accent, and I think you'll enjoy what he has to say. David?
Yeah, and I even brought you water. if you want to.
Thank you very much. This is about 6 or 7 times the amount of people I expected. So well done and congratulations. So I'm David Burke. I'm the founder of a nonprofit called Citizens Take Action that focuses on campaign finance reform and increasing civic engagement. I'm a Democrat, and I was recently elected to the city council in Cypress, California. And as you can imagine, I wasn't the preferred candidate of big money. So I want to talk about big money in politics, how we got into the situation we have, and what we can do to improve things. And I'm sure I don't have to go into great detail about the consequences of big money in politics, but briefly I'll touch on what me and my fellow founders viewed as the problems. First is that big money can artificially narrow down the field of candidates, especially at the federal level. You see a lot of independently wealthy individuals, people who are very well connected, are the kind of people who have an easy time raising money and getting elected. Second, legislators spend, at the federal level at least, an average of over 20 hours a week raising money. Some studies say it's even higher. And I saw this when I was a young congressional staffer. I remember one day I looked at a congressperson's schedule and I saw that he was eating 6 meals a day. And I said, how is that possible? He doesn't look like he's in poor shape. Why is he eating 6 times a day? Of course, they were all fundraisers. And this was on a weekday. So that gives you an idea of the commitment that legislators had to raising money even during the congressional session. But the worst consequence, in my opinion, is big money skews legislation in favor of powerful interests. And we have a page on our website where for every letter of the alphabet, you can pick an issue and tie it to big money. Whatever comes to mind, right? Prescription drug prices, reforming the tax code, passing common sense gun laws. Very often what you see in American politics, right, is public opinion wants this, Congress does this. And almost every time that happens, big money is over here. That's the explanation for why legislators don't do what the vast majority of Americans want. So how did we get into this mess? It wasn't always like this. For most of the 20th century, at least, Congress, state legislatures agreed that big money was a problem. They passed laws to limit it. And we went like that till about the 1970s. And then things changed due to poorly reasoned Supreme Court decisions. The first was called Buckley v. Vallejo. In that case, Congress had passed a number, and I apologize, you're gonna get a crash course in campaign finance law. So if you avoided law school, this is your 5 minutes of law school. Congress had passed laws in response to the corruption of the Nixon era. They passed campaign contribution limits. They passed limits on outside spending. They even passed limits on how much a candidate could spend of their own money on the campaign. And the Supreme Court could have and should have, in my opinion, upheld all of those laws, recognizing that they were important to protect the integrity of our democracy, and perhaps recognizing that legislators are better suited to decide this than 9 unelected judges. But the Supreme Court didn't do that. They issued a split decision. They said that limits on campaign contributions are legal because direct contributions to a campaign pose a significant risk of corruption. But they said that independent expenditures do not pose such a significant risk of corruption, and therefore they could be limited. So if you want to know why do we have campaign contribution limits, but we don't have limits on outside spending, it's because of this decision in Buckley versus Vallejo. And following the court's reasoning, you could stop a billionaire from giving $5,000 directly to a political candidate, but you couldn't stop that billionaire from spending $5 million on ads to support that same political candidate. So that really opened the floodgates of outside spending. The second major decision, which you've probably heard of at some point, was Citizens United in 2010. And in that case, the court essentially did for corporations and unions what Buckley did for individuals. Said they can spend as much money as they want through independent expenditures to influence elections. The problem with that decision, in my opinion, was that the court treated corporations, unions, and artificial entities exactly as if they were human beings for the purposes of political speech. And even dating back to conservative judges like William Rehnquist, the Supreme Court had long recognized that corporations in particular posed a unique threat to our democracy. They get all these benefits that people don't. They have perpetual life, limited liability, all sorts of tax breaks. For those reasons, judges previously found that we could limit their influence in this political sphere. Citizens United undid that. A third decision I touch on, which isn't as well known, is called Arizona Free Enterprise Club versus Bennett. Arizona had a really bad campaign finance scandal in the early 2000s, literally like embezzlement, bribery, legislators going to prison. So Arizona voters passed a public financing system in their state. The Supreme Court struck portions of it down because they felt it was unfair to the wealthier candidates for the less well-financed candidates to get matching funds. It was actually one of the only Supreme Court decisions where the law didn't inhibit speech in any way. It only created more speech, but the Supreme Court found a way to strike it down anyway. So between these cases, that's how we got into the mess that we're in with our current campaign finance system. and why there's not that much we can do. There are things we can do within that system, and I'll touch on them later, but our hands are tied. So what can we do? Well, in the big picture, we'd like to see these Supreme Court decisions overturned at some point in the future. There are two ways to do it. The first is for a court to overturn the decision on its own. This has happened a number of times throughout American history. Maybe the most famous example was Brown versus Board of Education overturning the prior decision of Plessy versus Ferguson, which held separate but equal. What happens over time is, right, the Supreme Court justices change, culture changes, and maybe they change their mind and they fix their mistake. It looks like that. It looks like that was probably going to happen with Citizens United at about the early part of 2016, because a lot of people assume that President Hillary Clinton would appoint 2 or 3 new justices who would correct the Supreme Court's mistake. And of course, we all know what happened. So sadly, at this point, we might be stuck with these decisions for decades unless we pursue the other path, which is passing a constitutional amendment. This, surprisingly, has been the more common way to overturn egregious Supreme Court decisions throughout American history. The 13th and 14th Amendments overturned Dred Scott, which upheld slavery. I didn't know this until I did research, but the 19th Amendment actually overturned a case called Minor v. Happersett, which had denied women's suffrage. And some of our other constitutional amendments that allowed lowering the voting age to 18, for example, also overturned Supreme Court decisions. So we've done this a lot throughout American history, but we haven't done it recently. We are supporting a constitutional amendment at the federal level. That's a lot of what we started the organization for, and work that we've done, trying to build support for a proposal called the Restore Democracy Amendment, or others like it, that essentially would shift power back from the Supreme Court to Congress, state legislators, and voters, saying that we should have the power to limit money in politics. And we shouldn't have these laws struck down by 9 unelected judges. The landscape, or I should say, at this point, though, of course, you're probably wondering, can we really pass a constitutional amendment? We haven't done it since 1980 something. It sounds like a great idea, but what are the chances? I'm more optimistic because I think we have more support than most people know already. So to pass a constitutional amendment, you need 2 things: 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of state legislatures. Currently, we have about 47 senators, 220 House members have co-sponsored an amendment proposal that would diminish the influence of money in politics. 22 states have passed ballot initiatives or referenda expressing their support. So it's not like there isn't that groundswell out there. And public opinion is also on our side. Polling shows that a vast majority of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents support proposals that would overturn Citizens United. So what is the problem? It's congressional Republicans. Despite 66% of Republicans voters saying they support proposals like this, can anyone guess how many congressional Republicans in the past 5 years have co-sponsored an amendment proposal like this? One. John Katko of New York was a co-sponsor at one point. But other than that, yeah, we're not doing so well there. So that's something our organization and other organizations have been trying to do, was build bipartisan support, make this the bipartisan issue in Congress that it is in the country. If that ever happens, we'll be able to pass an amendment and dramatically fix our campaign finance laws. But that's been the problem. Virtually every supporter you have in Congress is a Democrat. Most of the states that have passed ballot initiative or referenda are blue states, although some purplish and red leaning have joined the mix as well. So that's the amendment. What else can we do in the meantime at the state and local level? One thing we can do at the state level in particular is improve the disclosure of outside spending, right? You've heard about dark money, you know about PACs and super PACs. I bet all of you have at some point received mailers during campaigns, and you look at the bottom and try and figure out who it is, and you have no idea, right? It could be the Canyon, Safe Canyon Lovers PAC, and that could be one person, 100 people, you have no idea who it is. So one thing states can do is improve disclosure. Arizona recently passed a ballot initiative that does this. It requires not only the disclosure of independent expenditures over these levels, but interestingly, it requires disclosure of the original source of the money, which is important because that's who earned this money. What they're trying to avoid is funneling money through an LLC, a PAC, and then you don't know who it's from. Trying to force the disclosure of who is really the person or entity paying for this mailer or ad. This, not surprisingly, is being challenged at the courts. We'll see what happens. If it succeeds, then this kind of just level of disclosure could be a model we could try in other states, including California. California, in fact, and you may be aware, has passed some disclosure requirements, requiring the top 3 funders on ads to be displayed, or if you've gotten those political text messages, the first text you get from a campaign is supposed to say who it's from, who paid for it. So we've done some things, but the Arizona law is a little stronger in that it requires disclosure at the local level as well, more clearly, and that original source of the money. We don't have those yet in California. What about the local level? So if you'd heard of Citizens Take Action or me before I became a council member at all, it was probably because we released a report card that graded every city in Orange County on their campaign finance laws and the transparency of campaign finance data. What we wanted to get after was, one, what have cities done to protect themselves against undue influence from big money? Have they passed campaign contribution limits? In California, if a city doesn't pass any limit, the state default is $4,900, now $5,500. In a local election, we think that's extremely high. I mean, there are cities with 10,000 people that have a $5,500 individual campaign contribution limit. So we encourage limits closer to the $1,000 level. We also look at, have they enacted any prohibitions on contractors or developers? Because at the local level, what happens is these businesses, entities that want to contract with the city, developers, people looking for a permit, trash companies, they're the ones who are spending a lot of money and trying to exert influence at the local level. Some cities have passed laws trying to curtail that, saying if you have a contract with the city, you can only spend $250 in a contribution, things along those lines. And then we looked at the transparency of the information. Can you go on your city's website and find out who contributed to every candidate? Who is behind all the independent expenditures? Some cities have all that information, others don't post anything, and you just have to ask the city clerk for it. So it's very different from city to city. You may have seen it. You can read the whole report card at our website at citizenstakeaction.org. What cities I know Mission Viejo got an F. What other, are there any other cities you're particularly interested in? Lake Forest and Rancho San.
I read it and I think they got enough.
No, they got it.
They got it.
Lake Forest and Rancho Santa Margarita got Ds. And that was both for they earned the D because they do have some data on their website, but they haven't. Yeah, most. So I'll give you. What's that? Laguna Hills actually was quite good, A-, because I believe they had a pretty low limit. Oh, you know what? This might be a slightly outdated slide. I apologize. I think the one I'm holding in my hand has the most accurate grades. To give you some takeaways from the whole report, about 44% of cities have in Orange County have passed their own campaign contribution limits, but that means the majority have not. Only about 3 cities have passed specific limits on contractors or developers. Most cities have a little bit of campaign finance data on their website, but it usually doesn't go back far enough to cover every sitting elected official, which is what we advocate for. We think if someone's on your city council, you should be able to look up everyone who's ever contributed to their campaign so that they're voting on something, you can see if they might have a potential conflict there. So we released that last year. We're planning to expand it to other counties this year. And to just bring it full circle, because it looks like you're an active, engaged group. And I want to be clear about what can we do now without relying on a constitutional amendment. If you want to try and enact change at the local level, at the state level, the best things we can do are 1, pass campaign contribution limits at the local level. I'll skip the second one for a minute. 3, which we already touched on, is improving our disclosure requirements at the local and the state level. We think that campaign finance data should be clear, easy to understand. You should be able to find it in a few minutes. It should be accessible. For example, Washington State has a database that's searchable, and you can find any local candidate's campaign contributions on this one centralized website. California doesn't have anything like that yet. The second bullet, something we can do that's very rare at the local level especially, is publicly financed elections. You might find it in cities like San Diego or Los Angeles. It's very rare. I don't believe I saw it anywhere in Orange County. But publicly financed elections are probably the best way that we have to empower candidates who aren't independently wealthy, who may not be well connected, but have a lot of value as candidates, to, if they can show they can raise $500 and get 200 signatures, then maybe they get another $10,000 and they become a viable candidate. So I'm currently trying to figure out how we can enact more of those systems at the local level. If you're interested in getting involved or working with us in one of your cities to try and pass reforms, urge the city council to enact limits, improve the transparency of data, you can always sign up through our website, contact me directly at david@citizenstakeaction.org and volunteer. If you support the cause, you can become a monthly contributor. I know you have sustaining donors for the club. You can become a sustaining donor for our organization. We're really a grassroots group, and most of our donors contribute $10 to $20 a month, and that's how we do the work that we do. Our website, citizenstakeaction.org, as I mentioned. And with that said, I'd be happy to answer questions if anyone has. I think you're up first. Yes, sir.
It's impressive to hear about the various limits that Arizona and California and counties and cities have. How does the enforcement work? Who does it? What triggers them to do it? And what penalties are there for violations?
I was just speaking to State Senator Josh Newman about this, because it's a little tricky. But we have the FPPC in California, the Fair Political Practices Commission. They do some of the enforcement. The Secretary of State also does enforcement. The penalties can be a little bit varied. If you just file a form late, maybe it's $10 a day as a penalty. If you commit a more significant violation, it can get into thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. In my opinion, we need to clarify the enforcement a bit and devote more resources to it. I recently read an article that we have over $2 million of uncollected campaign finance violation fines. The Secretary of State hasn't collected on because they don't have the resources to pursue it. So unfortunately, some of these violations occur and there's no real punishment.
Is anybody setting up mechanisms in their laws that you can't make contributions very late in the in the process. I mean, there's some folks that are doing things that are clearly corrupt, but they're doing them so late that even if they were done, you know, on the front page of a local newspaper, it's not gonna make a difference.
Yeah, so he asked about contributions or maybe expenditures too that come really late in the election cycle. And they can be significant and damaging, and by the time you find out who it was, the election's over. So I'm not aware of efforts to limit contributions. The best things we can do are improve the disclosure and make it quicker so that you know exactly who it came from before you cast your ballot ideally. But I'm not aware of many legal means of preventing the contributions that may be involved. So I hand back there. Go ahead.
Could you refresh my memory with Citizens United, the Coast Brothers?
No, Citizens United was, well, I think the group was called Citizens United. They made this anti-Hillary Clinton movie, which that in itself is no big deal, but they wanted to put it on television for free, essentially making it a campaign ad. And so that was kind of the backstory behind how the case started, is whether it was legal or not for them to make that campaign expenditure within 90 days before the election. So it was related to a company essentially trying to pay for an anti-Hillary Clinton campaign. Yes, go ahead.
We talked about Citizens United and Buckley and Arizona. What, didn't we have a majority of liberal judges on the Supreme Court at the time? And so I'm thinking there must have been some liberal judges that voted in favor of these.
We didn't, yeah, well, Kennedy, I guess, was the swing vote. We didn't have a majority at that time of Citizens United and Arizona. We did have a majority for a while before that. And I didn't mention this case, but in 1990, there was actually a case called Austin versus Michigan Chamber of Commerce. Justice Thurgood Marshall wrote the opinion, and that was basically the opposite of Citizens United. The money has all these negative effects. These restrictions are justified and important. That's what the law was for 20 years. But then Democrats lost their majority and Citizens United overturned the decision. Yes, sir.
As far as all these amendments and legislation that we're considering or trying to consider, there's got to be other groups on the other side pushing hard against them. And I assume some of them are like ALEC who are doing this. Yeah, I mean, how big is the force against this sort of thing? And who are the major players? ALEC, who else?
Well, the anti-amendment movement isn't all that big because, oh, I'm sorry. He asked who are kind of the major players on the opposing side of this, like the pro big money people, essentially. I'm trying to think, you know, I don't know if I know the names that well. It's kind of, who are the groups that always stand up for like extreme freedom of speech and anonymous political donation? Does anybody know?
Would ACLU be involved?
No. ACLU is actually a mixed bag on this stuff. Sometimes they oppose campaign finance restrictions, but they're not typically the ones fighting this in court. I think it is a lot of like the Koch wealthy donor network that's behind it and like funds some of these claims. But I apologize, I don't have I don't recall the names that well. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so David, actually, as to the names, a couple of months ago, we had a speaker. He was an elected official in Cincinnati, Ohio, subsequently an activist. And he indicated that it was the Koch brothers who financed a group of people who did just what you described. And he gave the example of abortion, anti-abortion. So you had surveys that said the majority of the population were in favor of abortion, but since the Ohio legislators legislated against abortion. And it was the Koch brothers and their money that made the legislation go through the state legislature. And it was specifically mentioned an organization, but it was the financing that came from the Koch brothers organization.
Yeah, that's not surprising. And it's the same types of people who fund, what is it, the Heritage Foundation, things like that. They're the ones who fight these, like Arizona initiatives. Yes,
Does Citizens United allow for foreign contributions?
it's not supposed to, but I think there are loopholes in the system that legislators are working to try and close, because, right, if with credit cards and all sorts of online payment now, it's easier than it should be for foreign money to get in sometimes, but no, it's not supposed to be illegal, and every now and then you'll read an article about, Trump official indicted for, giving foreign money to Trump's campaign. So Citizens United wasn't supposed to allow that. Yes, sir, in the back.
David, when you came in, I don't know how much of you heard, but we have focus groups. I'm a member of the focus group that works in Mission Viejo. We know about your report, we read your report. Do you guys have a plan, as it were, that we could take, analyze a little bit and present it to the city council, some strategy for getting it passed? We know it needs to be done here in Mission Viejo.
We can work with you directly on, obviously we have sample legislation. It's not hard to look at other cities and create that. But in terms of what might work in Mission Viejo, it's a matter of the composition of the individual council members.
We're down 4-1.
Well, then let's get together with the one, and maybe they can test the waters a little bit, and we can figure out, at the very least, the transparency piece shouldn't be controversial. Like, look at the so, and it may be, but if that's something that the council member you support brings up publicly and the other 4 vote against it, I think that's still a form of victory for the Democratic council member.
We'll be in contact with you.
Happy to hear it. Go ahead.
There's some real problems at the local level with the ability of city clerks to either want to, look critically at the documents they're receiving, but those documents don't go anywhere else. And so if the city clerk gets documents from the old team, nobody's gonna question them. And some cities like Lake Forest have paid for NetFile for their candidates, but they're the only ones down here that pay for it. So there's a real problem with the quality of the reporting that's going on, simply because it's hard for candidates to do that kind of reporting. And there's, just finding treasurers is a real challenge. So it's when local candidates don't have access to NetFile and they don't have access to professional treasurers, garbage in, garbage out, so that's another kind of technical side of the problem. I've looked at reports from Mission Viejo, and if those reports were going to the county registrar of voters office, they get kicked out in a heartbeat, but they just get filed. That's all that happens, so.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's in a lot of cities, right? It's just they have an individual clerk and they maybe scan the documents and put them online, and there's no formal software that makes it easy to read. A lot of times I look at city website documents and they're upside down, or the size is all wrong, and
to take that out of the hands of the city clerks and give it to the county registrar of voters. For example, all the school districts run through the county registrar of voters.
yeah, or to have a statewide database like Washington does. So yeah, that's something we're trying to figure out how we can move in that direction for sure. Great points. Go ahead.
thank you for doing the charting of the individual cities. Question is, do you do it for the county as well? And the reason I ask that is that there's several of us out here who live in unincorporated communities. And therefore the county supervisor is essentially our mayor. So we still have those concerns about how that money is going into those campaigns.
We haven't done it at that level yet. We just stuck with the cities. But if it's something you're interested in, we could work together and maybe put together at least like a basic template or rubric that can be applied to counties as well. Yes.
A lot of times when you get contributions, they're coming in under the name of some super PAC or PAC, which has a name like, Citizens for Mothers and Babies. And, I mean, how can you be against that? It's got to be good. Even if you have transparency, unless you really dig into it, you really don't know where the money's coming from.
Yeah, so that's why we need a different level of transparency, right? One that someone can look at a mailer or an ad and actually know who it's coming from, as opposed to what you're describing. Yeah, my advice regarding political mailers is really just, if you just throw them all out, that's not a bad idea. And I sent mail during my campaign. Okay? But if it's not clearly from a candidate themselves, I would just be very, very skeptical of the message or what it claims to say, because they're so deceptive, especially, and last thing, do you know what slate mailers are? Yeah. So slate mailers, for anyone who doesn't know, it sounds like y'all do. It's, I'm trying to think, what are some of the names of them? Like, I don't know, tax fighters, slate mailer, or whatever. Yeah, and it has it might have the picture of all the endorsed candidates. I learned as I was a candidate, that those aren't real endorsements, right?
Right.
Do you know that you just pay your way on there? I was so disappointed when I learned that. So if there's, I know, I should have known better, right? But I was so naive, I assumed there was at least like a sham endorsement process. No, it's. Yeah, and sometimes, the Republicans have their slate mailers, some Democrats have their slate mailers.
Buy your way on it.
But yeah, sometimes, so anyway, if there's one piece of mail you ignore, make it the slate mailer. Well, listen, I'm happy to stick around for a bit. If anyone wants to talk further, as I said, Mike should put my email in the slide, but it's david@citizenstakeaction.org. If you have questions, if you'd like to connect, talk about reforms in your city. I'm not that hard to find anymore now that I'm a city council member. David Burke, Cypress is pretty easy to find as well. But thank you for the thoughtful questions, for coming out in the rain. It's been an honor to present to the group, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Okay. Okay, folks, so we have this room for another half hour. So if you want to visit or chat with your friends or, make plans to buy slate mailers. Buy merchandise, that's right, buy merch. And by the way, we are both a federal and a state PAC. So we have a great treasurer. But I'm telling you, the treasurer problem is a real problem. Because there are a very limited number of professional treasurers. They're not cheap. And they make no effort to train volunteers. In fact, they actively discourage you. So it's a real problem. Okay, folks, good night.